Well, for more on that story now, we're joined by Amy Arnold, an anti-trafficking trainer and investigator with Unchain Our Children. Amy, a very good evening to you. Good to have you on the SABC tonight. So these 7 Chinese nationals sentenced to 20 years each, basically for trafficking dozens of Malawians, locking them up, subjecting them to hard labor in a factory about 5 or 6 years ago. How common is this sort of thing right under our noses in South Africa?
Well, when you look at the trafficking indicators in this case, it's very common. It's following the typical things. They lived and worked in the same place. They were made to work 7 days a week, 11-hour work shifts. They were threatened. They were horrible conditions. You know, they were only meant to go into a tuck shop on the premises that had very high prices, never allowing them to send stuff back home. So they just really, a lot of the common factors that happens all around us happened in this case as well.
And I've asked you how common this sort of crime is, but how easy is it to detain, in essence, people as slaves, as happened in this case, in a factory in Johannesburg, undetected?
Yes, unfortunately, it is common. But what we must ask ourselves here is why the Chinese and why Malawian and why South Africa? And basically what they did was they followed an Indian business model they saw happening in Malawi. So what happens there a lot is the Indians will set up businesses. The Malawians are their workers. They are very hard workers. This attracted Chinese businesses. Now, Chinese businesses came into Malawi, set up things. Malawians started to complain about work conditions and labor laws. The Minister of Labor in Malawi was able to shut these down in Malawi. Well, what did the Chinese do? They're very good smugglers, unfortunately, and they brought them over to South Africa, counting on the fact that South Africa would not care as much because they're migrants. But fortunately, that's not the case. And South Africa did a very good job of not just stopping at labor law and violations and immigration laws, but going after the actual trafficking and person conviction, which is very hard to do, and it's big applause to them for that.
And these Malawians were brought into the country in containers, so already an inhumane transit, if you will, into the country. What needs to happen to intercept this sort of illegal movement of people at that point before they ultimately end up at the destination?
Yeah, well, it's up to the officials at Border Control. They need to be educated well on the difference between smuggling and trafficking. Although smuggling is still illegal, there's a big difference there on the purpose of what's the purpose of exploitation. And then also we gotta fight hard on our corruption. You know, they come through South Africa knowing that we're full of corruption, knowing that they can get fake documents, and they're counting on the fact that our government officials are going to overlook it. And thankfully, this time they did not.
And do you think, Amy, we've cracked or we've scratched the surface in any significant way in terms of people smuggling, people trafficking? Because when you look at what was done here, we often think of sex slavery, right? But these are basically people forced into hard labor where someone is also making a profit at the end of that.
So any case any arrest or any victim saved is a great thing. It draws attention, it helps us educate those, and we can use it as a case study. So the fact that this went all the way to court, it takes 5 or 6 years, which is not untypical, but the fact that it went and they got a trafficking conviction is just very crucial, very crucial. Oftentimes I see officials stop, like I said, at labor violations or Immigration Act and just send people back and nothing else is done. So really, really good job on them for not stopping there and getting that trafficking conviction.
We're showing pictures at the moment, Amy. You're not able to see because you're on our virtual platform, but I'm hoping we can bring up those images and listen, because the daughter of one of the people convicted today, one of the 7 Chinese nationals, basically had an outburst following the sentencing and said there's a bigger trafficking syndicate at play here, and that the kingpin, unfortunately we don't have the audio, so that would defeat the purpose of adding to this conversation. But nonetheless, she was saying that there's a bigger trafficking syndicate here and the kingpin is still out on the loose right under our noses. What should be done with her now? Should she not be taken into custody and forced to make an official statement to police? Because surely not reporting a crime or the involvement of a person in such a serious crime is itself an offense?
Yes, no, that's very common. There's organized crime controls human trafficking most of the time, a lot of the time. Worldwide, that's our biggest traffickers are involved in organized crime. So it's not surprising that she would say something like that. The people who are jailed now, yes, they did wrong things. Were they probably used in the process? Yes. Does it mean it's okay? But when you look at a country like China, it's not a free nation. It's a communist state. So it's I'm not surprised that their own citizens, their own people were used in some sort of way. And yes, we must go after the trafficker, the kingpin, or else it's just going to continue.
How dangerous would a kingpin in such a syndicate be?
Very dangerous. Well, again, you talk about an unfree nation, a communist country, where they restrict the freedom of speech so much. Worldwide, they're the biggest jailers of people who are defending free speech. So even this young lady who spoke out needs to be very careful and probably needs some protection, because they're just the type of people, the type of country, and the organized crime in that country who are going to try to silence her.
All right, Amy, good to talk to you. Amy Arnold, an anti-trafficking trainer and investigator with Unchain Our Children.